Alright, July the 20th, about 6:23. Maybe this camera won't fog up on me here. Squirrel hunters with air rifles. Squirrel hunters with rimfire rifles. You know, the old sharpshooter, he squirrel hunts. Maybe some of you all have seen some of my videos. Now, I've got this Impact, FX Impact M4. And if that gun will shoot anything like it does in warmer weather and colder weather, I could engage a squirrel way out there, okay? And I could do it at the 120-yard range, probably even farther. Let's concentrate, though, on the 120-yard range, okay? Let's say you've got a voodoo rifle. All right, they shoot good from all accounts. You got an old Anschutz. You're going to be a long-range squirrel hunter. Even, you know, maybe you've got a FX Impact M4 shooting slugs like I do. So we're just going to concentrate on 120 yards for right now, okay? So what does a first focal plane scope do for you in a situation like that? Now, let me say this. I'm a realist. And you'll see these old boys over there in South Africa shooting birds off of damn grain bins and down silos and light wires at long distance. Well, you know, sharpshooter can do that too. Okay? But there's one problem. You've got clear line of sight, no obstruction. So, yes, you either have to hold for drop or you have to dial the scope to compensate, correct? Well, now there's other programs that will do this. This is the Element Ballistics app. And what I have done is my air rifle, FXM4, the data is in here under Profile 1. And I've even got my 17 Mach 2 rifle in here. The data that I actually use to squirrel hunt. And you all have seen me make some long shots with that gun in the leaves all. Even leaves on with groundhogs. But groundhogs are usually less obstructive when they're out in a field. Okay? So what I did is I've got 22 barrels for that CZ, so I went and put the same scope height data and just said, okay, I'm going to trade that barrel out for a Lilja barrel that I have. Now, I dialed in the ballistic coefficient that's pretty close to a 22 long rifle, 0.125, and I put in a velocity of 1,050 feet a second. All right? So, here's what's nice about a first focal plane scope. You're not going to get this luxury with a first focal plane, okay? Or a second, I'm sorry. You're not going to get this luxury with a second focal plane scope. Okay, so here's my air rifle data. Now, my air rifle is set up for a 50-yard zero. Okay? But that's not what I've got dialed in here. I changed the zero to 120. With the ballistic coefficient and the speed that my air rifle is shooting. There, you see that 992 feet a second, and there's my scope height on that FX M4. All right, so watch what happens here. You see that elevation MOA column there. All right, you see what happens there? Okay, so now I'm going up. Look at there, 11 MOA. Says, see what I'm saying? Shooting at 120, it's telling me that bullet is 11 MOA over line of sight. 10, see it's dropping a little bit. The distance is growing. But notice that distance there. 6.4 is about the biggest number in the drop column. Where it's up. You see that? You see what I've got there for MOA. Alright? So now I'm coming on down here. Okay, so now the numbers are starting to decrease. I'm at the 100-yard mark. Okay, there's 120. Boom, I'm on 0. I just shot that squirrel. So what this is telling me with that air rifle, if I dial that thing, let's say to 12 power, on this Element Nexus scope I've got, this first focal plane, notice what happens here. I'm all the way back. There I am, right there. I'm all the way back here at 26 yards. Look at that. 10 MOA, 11. There's 11. See that? 11 is about 11 and change is the highest number that we see. Okay? So when I look at a squirrel and I laser him at 120 yards, I've got my MOA marks in that scope. So I need to be looking above my crosshair. If it's clear and I don't see any limbs or twigs cutting through between 11 and a half, 12, let's just say 12 MOA. If there's nothing in there, I'm good to go. Now, you still may have to play the wind and shit like that, but as far as elevation, I'm good to go. Okay? Now, watch what happens here. Okay, this is my 17 Mach 2. Okay, I've got the data in on it. You see my scope height, and there's the 120-yard 0. Now, watch what happens here. Now I'm down here at 30 yards. There's the elevation MOA. Look what's happened here. I'm going up. I'm at 57 yards. Okay, there's 2 MOA. Okay, now the number's going down. Look at there. You see that? See what happens? Oh, I'm at the 120 yard. Boom! I've just shot a squirrel. So basically, if I can see the squirrel, and I'm looking more or less at the squirrel, and I don't see any obstruction in that scope, more likely I'm pretty good to go with that gun, with that scope height. 17 Mach 2. You see that? You see that? I'm pretty much good to go. The only thing I have to guard against is something real close to me, like 5 yards. All right? 5, 6 yards, you'd want to make sure, because you can look through the scope and you may not see the obstruction that would be just below the scope. Well, you would see that probably with your eye, when you're looking. Okay, now I'm going to click on here. Whoops. Now here's the 22 long rifle. Now don't worry about that bullet weight. Let's see here. Yeah, I've got the ballistic coefficient dialed in there. There's the sight height. Okay, now see the 0 there, 120 yards. So now we're here again. Look where we're at. We're at 30 yard mark. Look at that number in the MOA column. You see that? So when I look through that scope on that 22 rifle, and that Nexus scope, shooting at a 120 yard squirrel, the bullet is going to pass where I'm looking in that scope at 30 yards at about 11 MOA. Okay? Now we're going to keep going on out here. Now look at there. Now we're at 60 yards, 9 MOA. You see that? Almost 10 MOA. So again, it's pretty close to that air rifle I've got. I've got to be looking at about 12 MOA or less in there for obstruction. Now, the distance the obstruction is from you can be a player. Okay? Notice what happens out here. Now I'm at the 90 yard mark. Look at that, 5 MOA. So I don't have to worry about an obstruction that's 10 MOA at that distance. Okay? So it would behoove a person using a 22 long rifle an Impact M4 to know a little bit about in squirrel woods where the bullet lies in the line of sight in respect to your reticle, shooting longer shots. Okay, now I'm going to change. This is the 22 long rifle. I changed it to 100 yards. Alright, so this is the 22 long rifle. You see the ballistic coefficient there, 125. Now I'm at 100 yards. You see what I've got there. I'm at 57 yards. I've got 6.38 for MOA. That's where the bullet's going to be striking. Okay, so I could look in that scope. I would be looking. Of course, the farther you're shooting, the higher up in the scope you might want to look. Now, but you get to draw. You may actually have to laser an obstruction if you're unsure about it, okay? And I'm going to click back on the 17 HM2. Now I'm at 100 on it. Look what happens. There's the elevation MOA column. I'm all the way back to 32 yards. You see what happens there? That column doesn't have really anything much in it. It's like you see that squirrel, you get that crosshair on it, hold for wind, little wind if there is any, and kaboom! Now, I've mentioned this before in a previous video, okay, but this don't get talked about a whole lot. So there will be some shots in the woods, and I'm going to use this FX M4 Impact. There will be some shots in the woods that I'm not going to be able to make. Not because they're out of range, but because of an obstruction. And the obstruction is not even going to be in the line of sight. I could probably even call it out in that trigger cam. So that would save me from possibly scaring the squirrel, save me from wasting a shot, and save me from wasting air in that air rifle. This is a whole lot easier to be able to judge with a first focal plane scope of high quality. Alright? I just thought I would share this. I hope you enjoyed the old hick from the sticks. There is walnuts here this year. I've looked. I don't know if they're going to be in excess or not, though.